The season to be shopping. That was not a joke either. Like, I know some people say that like it's a joke. It's not a joke. It's actually what happens. Anyway, the gamer in your life is more than likely going to want a present. I got 20 suggestions for you. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, 20 of the best Christmas gifts for gamers in 2024. Starting off with number 20, the Deadpool butt cheek replica controller. Yes, you too, or the person you're buying this for, can now have their very own Deadpool butt controller. Microsoft announced this ridiculous thing around the time Deadpool and Wolverine came out, and they hyped it up. Everybody got super duper hyped, and they revealed it was a sweepstakes. Nobody could actually get one except for one lucky winner. Well, that's all changed thanks to one enterprising Etsy creator. Now anyone can get the butt controller, well, shell, anyway. It's not the full thing. You have to put the shell over a standard controller, but it looks pretty sturdy and solid. It's pre-painted, and that's not always a thing with Etsy stuff. And if that's not enough, behold the Venom butt cheek controller, which adds a variant with some Venom flavoring to the whole thing. As a gag gift, doesn't get more ridiculous than this. Just make sure there's an actual controller you can attach it to. At number 19 is PS5 custom controllers. If you're looking for a controller that's not quite as absurd as the Deadpool one, but still wants some customization, then the stuff over at Controller Chaos should fit the bill. It's not cheap, but there are some deep customization options here that make the controller one of a kind. Along with custom colors for every part of the controller, there's 4 separate image and text spots. Just be aware, each separate customization costs money, so if you want a gold-plated controller, that's going to be pretty pricey. It's not a cheap gift-giving option at all, but, I mean, just buying a regular controller is crazy expensive anyway, so, If you want to splurge, there is a lot of good stuff here, though. And if you don't want the burden of designing the controller, they have lots of pre-built options as well. At number 18, the Get Mechanism gaming pillow. It might sound stupid at first, but it's actually a handy accessory for handheld gaming. We're way past the days of the Game Boy-sized handheld. Handhelds these days are big old bricks, and they can get exhausting or just awkward to hold for long periods of time. I have a Steam Deck. I love it. It's great. If I hold it for about a half hour, my hand starts falling asleep. Same thing goes for the Switch, although to a little bit less of a degree. It's quite a bit lighter, or at least seems lighter. I don't know. I don't like my hand falling asleep while I'm playing a game, though. This gaming pillow, however, fixes that. Basically, it's a portable stand mounted on a sturdy pillow that makes it easy to use just about anywhere. And even though they primarily show this thing with the Steam Deck, it's actually compatible with any modern handhelds like the Nintendo Switch and the phones and the tablets. All of them do it if you sit there long enough. It's not that expensive either. It's $64 for the base model, and you can choose which console grip to include and buy other grips separately or swap them out as needed. It's one of those things people aren't necessarily going to buy for themselves, so buy it as a gift. It's not ridiculously expensive, and they might actually like it. And number 17 is the Marty and Ouija shirt. Don't usually mention t-shirts and stuff on these because there's not a lot to talk about. But while cruising Etsy, this thing caught my eye and I had to include it. It's ugly, it's stupid, and it is the perfect gift for friends who willingly wear video game graphic tees. Best of all, it's cheap. One of the cheapest things on this list at only $25, which is still a lot for a t-shirt, but isn't in 2024. And number 16 is the iFixit Pro Tech Toolkit. For anyone who has a burgeoning interest in electronic repair, console repair, modding, or really anything that involves opening up electronics, this is a must-have toolkit. I have a lot of respect for iFixit for making it easier than ever to do your own repairs on hardware, and while their stuff isn't the cheapest around, you can get similar toolkits cheaper, but this is very high-quality stuff. There's a lot of tools here. They're a good starting place for almost any major electronics repair job, and iFixit's website has a lot of tutorials covering the most common repairs for every major console out there, and they're actually pretty easy to follow. I've used them. I have fixed, much to Nintendo's dismay, multiple Nintendo Switches, and it has been because of them. And number 15 is chocolate game controllers. I am not too proud to admit that I spent way too long staring at this picture. I was trying to determine if the controller itself was real or not. It's not. It is a chocolate game controller. It's just a mold of a game controller that is filled with chocolate. You can get it in milk chocolate, dark chocolate, or white chocolate. Can't vouch for the flavor, but I'm into the concept. Definitely giving some of these away for Christmas. They're $19. You can have them packaged on ice to keep them fresh for additional cost. So like most stuff from Etsy, it's not cheap, but as far as gifts go, it is a bargain and it's pretty novel. And number 14 is 8-Bit Do's Ultimate Gaming Controller. They have some of the best third-party controllers out there. Quality parts, not quite as eye-gougingly expensive as the official controllers, and pretty good selection these days. But the controller I want to highlight is the newest, actually. It is the ultimate gaming controller with updated Hall effect joysticks and a charging dock. For PC gaming, these things are great, and in my experience, I found them more reliable than the official Xbox PC controllers. That hasn't been everyone's experience, so buyer beware, but anecdotally speaking, they've been good to me. And number 13 is a Bioshock-themed light box. You've probably seen a lot of shadow boxes and light box themed gaming stuff out there. I've highlighted them on these lists in the past. They're good little decorative gifts for a gamer who wants to highlight their hobby, but wants something a little understated, or at least more understated than a 6-foot Sephiroth statue. These light boxes from Pivot Frame Studios on Etsy are really good. Easily some of the best I've seen. They're detailed and stylized. They look nice even if you don't really know what they're representing. The Bioshock one is especially nice looking, but they have a lot of these things in their store for all kinds of games like God of War, Halo, Space Marine, Fallout New Vegas, all kinds of stuff. And number 12 is Pokeball replicas. Hard to call a one-to-one replica item understated, but these Pokeballs from Wand Company, they have these nice black stands, and they don't have any big Pokemon TM logos on them, so they look nice, and they make a good display piece for a Pokemon fan. So you got one of those in your life, throw one of these at them. It's not going to capture them, but it may capture their heart. The thing that impresses me most about these is how many variants there are. They have pretty much every possible Pokemon to choose from here. So if the Gift E has a particular favorite that they somehow have made clear to you, because, I don't know, these things could possibly have come up, you can buy them their very own luxury ball, which sounds hilarious to say. They even have an electric feature. They light up and make noises when you get close to the button. It's a cute little gift, but it's not cheap, though. And number 11 is Mr. Pi. For retro game-obsessed people or just people who like to tinker with emulation boxes, Mr. Pi is probably the best and easiest system on the market, if not one of the. What makes it different from the average cheapy AliExpress handheld is that while this particular system is Raspberry Pi based, which makes it a cheaper alternative, it uses the Mr. framework, which makes it some of the most accurate emulation you can get out there. And because it's open source, it's also highly customizable. These things are becoming more common, so they're cheaper and easier to get a hold of. But during the early days, it was very DIY, and most Misters didn't come with a shell or anything. You just had a board, and that was about it. There's a lot of options for these, but this one's the cheapest and the most well-known. It comes with a shell. It's easy to start it with in comparison. If you're not a serious PC user, you could still maybe get tripped up a bit setting it up, but as far as these things goes, this is the entry-level model. And number 10 is the 4-way or more HDMI splitter. Do you know somebody who has a lot of consoles but not enough HDMI slots? You know, sounds like a stupid minor problem. I have to get up and walk 2 feet to the TV to unplug the PlayStation 5 and plug in the Switch. While that sounds simple, the devil himself could not have come up with a worse torture. Come on, it really does suck. Super annoying to swap HDMIs every time you want to play a different system. And it's easy for this stuff to pile up if you're still holding on to last-gen systems or, anything. And seriously, all that really matters is that this thing works, does exactly what it needs to do, excluding some weird edge cases, but you can connect all your systems and swap between them with either a remote or just by pressing a button on the front of the device. It's that easy, and while it's not as cheap as it probably should be, it's at least in the affordable gift-giving price range. At number 9 is Replicades. These things are so dumb, but there's something very charming about them. They're little replica arcade machines that wouldn't be normally that notable, but they're so detailed and accurate, they're actually pretty interesting. These things don't just look like tiny versions of arcade games, they play the games. You're not actually going to do much playing these things. They're just too small to properly use, but the fact they actually work makes it a lot more fun to mess around with. They even come with little coins that you can actually insert in the slot using a pair of tweezers that come packed in, which is very, very silly. Kind of detail I can get behind. They are expensive, but they're cheaper than similar but inferior quarter arcade machines, mostly because they're smaller, but the detail is better overall on these replicas. At number 8 is Thrustmaster T-Flight HOTAs. With Flight Simulator 2024 finally pulling out of the tailspin that was its launch, now is as good a time as ever to gift yourself, or, someone else if you're a madman, the uncomfortably titled Thrustmaster Joystick Controller. I mean, in all seriousness, it's a joystick too, so it's not just uncomfortably titled, but let's move past it. These things are the premier flight sticks. They have been for years now. They're quality devices that are not cheap, but for the most immersive flight experience, they're the best tools you've got. And hey, this doesn't have to just be for flight sims either. They work great for Mech Warrior games too. At number 7, Call of Duty Zombies Ray Gun. Another one of those things from Mad Men, only because sweet Jesus, that price tag, $143. It's a lot of smackers for this thing. But damn if it does not look good. There's only one left for sale at the time of writing, so it could very well be sold out by the time this video is actually published. But it's such a cool prop replica, I wanted to show it off. Play Zombies mode in Call of Duty, you'll know this thing. It's iconic, and the quality here is absolutely through the roof. They even have LED lights inside that emulate the effects in the game. Like, honestly, for a hardcore Call of Duty fan, amazing display piece, this one. For something that's a lot cheaper and probably isn't sold out yet, you can get the 3D printed Juggernog machine that optionally comes with LED lights. That's only $30, but, not the same. And number 6 is Alexander Warrior Jar. Fan Gamer, one of the many go-to places for gifts for gamers. They got a huge selection of games from massively popular franchises to obscure indies, and I'm all for it. Every year they introduce a whole bunch of new stuff to their catalog, but for this entry I gotta go with something that came out earlier this year. It's a stuffed animal of everyone's favorite man jar, Alexander. Like, look at it. It's great. You got the long arms that are wired so you can actually pose him. He's got the weird little chicken legs. It's an impressively detailed and sturdy plush for an entirely reasonable price. Confuse your kids, relatives, frustrate your girlfriend, do whatever. It's just amazing they made a stuffed animal out of this guy. That actually looks good. And number 5 is the Bloodborne Complete Guide 25th Anniversary Edition, which is a confusing title because Bloodborne is about 10 years old. The 25th anniversary is for the company that makes these guides called Future Press, and it's a hell of a guide. It's a very, very pretty guide, especially for those of us who grew up in the era of game guides. Whether it's maybe a little late for a complete guide for Bloodborne or not, 10 years, it's enough to know what's going on in the game. But some of us just like flipping through a guidebook. The best guides were fun to flip through even when you weren't playing the game, and this is one of those guides. It's even got a bestiary. That's the stuff that we want right there. It's not just a guide either. It also includes an interview with the ever-elusive Hidetaka Miyazaki, so there's some good stuff here for Bloodborne superfans. It's not cheap, though. It's more of a coffee table book, but it's very good gift material. At number 4 is the Retro Tink 4K. Do you know anybody who is that infuriating combination of being obsessed with old school games and picture quality? Like, come on, you're not buying a $750 upscaler for somebody else, right? Now, the actual effectiveness of these kinds of devices is questionable, but the Retro Tink is the real deal. I mean, it better be for how much this thing costs, and even with that, there's a lot of fiddling required to get everything the way you want it. But for emulation freaks and fidelity mutants in the audience, this is what you want. For those of us who don't need to play 30-year-old games in 4K, there's the 5X Pro, which is significantly cheaper. It's not cheap, it's still $350, but it's way cheaper than the 4K model, and it's a solid alternative. And number 3 is Lego Super Mario World, Mario and Yoshi. Lego and Nintendo, two overpriced things that anybody buys anyway. Nobody can resist the siren song of those sweet plastic bricks. Lego and pixel art also seem like a match made in heaven, and this model is an almost perfect recreation of Mario from Super Mario World, the sprite. That's charming enough on its own, but it also animates. That probably explains how absurdly expensive this thing is. Also how big it is. You'd think it's small, but no, it is massive. And number 2 is Sea of Stars, the concept art of Bryce Coe. There's a lot of video game art books out there, and the quality can vary pretty wildly depending on how much concept art was even made for a game. There's so many art books that they're sometimes boring renders of the environment or really early character sketches. This is true of the biggest games down to the smallest indies. If they didn't have a lot of concept art, there's not much of a book. The Sea of Stars art book, on the other hand, it's something else. It's wall-to-wall concept art of every character, town, location, cutscene, monster, everything. You'd think that they just got Bryce Coe for the cover art and a few pieces of key art, but no, they did everything in the game, and it is fantastic. And it's a fun game, but I think the art book kind of represents exactly what the game is. An absolutely beautiful thing that the art kind of matters, maybe even a little bit more. If you appreciate a good art book or mid-90s JRPG art, or at least art in that style, this is definitely something you'll like. And finally, at number 1, I Ungrade wireless mousepad controller. Time to wrap this up with the most insane thing I could find on AliExpress, and yeah, it's a doozy. It's actually called the Ungrade. That's not a typo. At least it's not my typo. Look at this. It's a controller, I guess. Here's a game. Show someone a picture of this thing without the title and have them guess what it is. My first guess was not controller. Like, honestly, what the hell is this? I don't know. There's all this ZX, Alt, Tilt stuff, crap I don't want to mess with. I don't know what the radial buttons are, or what the big orange button is. I don't know why the touch thing is so big. There's a lot of questions, but it's also $31, which is not a lot. I think this is a fun thing to get to baffle and confuse. You can also get it in pink. It's a waste of money, but a lot of gifts are waste of money. This one's at least a fun waste of money.